Hello everyone. Do you wish to paint a beautiful village landscape like this one with nice full-grown trees and beautiful houses, pathways, fences, etc. in watercolors? Come on then, welcome to my channel. Do stay with me till the end and let's see how this can be painted. Here I have drawn out the initial outline of the painting with a simple graphite pencil, and now with a kneadable eraser I am simply dabbing out any extra graphite that may be left on the paper so that it doesn't mingle with our watercolors later on. Just so that it doesn't give a muddy effect to our watercolors and spoil our painting. This is the color palette I am using, which is lemon yellow, gamboge hue, yellow ochre, orange, crimson red, rose madder, burnt sienna, raw umber, sap green, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, Prussian blue, turquoise, Indian red, raw sienna, vermilion hue, magenta and a little bit of black. And now I am simply spraying some water on the palette as the paints have dried up, and so as to reactivate them once again. And now with a wet brush loaded with water, I am simply wetting the sky area thoroughly with water so as to make it usable for the wet and wet technique that we are going to use to paint the sky area. I am now introducing the sky colors into this wet area where I am using the ultramarine blue for the darker side of the sky and lemon yellow for the lighter side, just so as to indicate the dawn time of the day. Because the surface is wet, you can see the colors are mingling with each other, merging with each other beautifully, which is the wet and wet technique. If you are a beginner and would like to know more about the various techniques used in watercolors, a video link has been given in the description which you may check out. Here I am simply softening the hard edges left while painting the sky with a damp brush. Now I am introducing some greens for the distant trees into the sky area itself while the sky area is still damp, so that the distant trees remain blurred and they don't stand out too much. This will give a sort of a depth to our painting. Once again I am softening the hard edges of the trees with a damp brush so that they maintain the blurred effect and do not become too prominent, so as to bring the depth of the painting. I am introducing slight darks at the lower edges so that the dimension is brought out further. Now for the main tree foliage, I will be using a range of greens ranging from lemon yellow and sap green for the lighter side, and I will be adding some raw umber and even Prussian blue for the darker side of the tree. Here I am using the scumbling technique to bring out the tree foliage, intermingling the various green shades with each other while they are all still wet. I will be also working in layers here, adding more and more details in the subsequent layers. This is the beauty and the very essence of watercolors, where we can simply enjoy the fluid intermingling of shades with each other, and which is unique to this very medium of transparent watercolors. One very important thing to take care here is of course the light direction, which is never to be ignored. Here we are assuming the light source coming from the right side, and so all surfaces facing the light will be in lighter shades and all surfaces against the light source will be in darker shades. This will have to be maintained for each and every element we are depicting in the entire painting. Now while I am painting the tree foliage, you will notice I have left out a few blank patches in between here and there which show the sky peeping through, and I am also adding gradually the darker shades on the left hand sides mostly. I am also using bolder patches in the center of the tree, and only at the edges, at the periphery of the foliage, I am indicating the smaller, tinier leaves which can be seen. The brush that I am using here is a mop brush with a nice tip, so that this sort of an effect can be taken care. For the walls of the house, now I am using Gamboge U, and I will be adding darker shades in the subsequent layers. I am lifting out some of the distant trees painted so as to accommodate a part of the house there. I am repeating the same for the distant houses, but since they are at a distance, I am not going to add too many details there. I will be working on more layers and detailings for the tree foliage after it dries up a bit. Till such time, let's work on the first layer of the hillsides with yellow ochre, burnt sienna, sap green and raw umber. Again, this is done in the wet and wet technique so as to have a seamless effect. I intend to have some bright yellow bushes along a pathway leading to the house, so I am using Gamboge U for that. Similarly, let's continue on the hillside on the other side of the pathway, and then again let's have that bright colored yellow bush on this side of the pathway too. Since the hillsides are sloping upwards on both sides of the pathway, the brush strokes to paint these hillsides will also go along that direction. This side of the house, which is against the light source, I am painting it in a darker hue with the help of a mixture of yellow ochre and burnt sienna. And now for the steps and pathway, I am using yellow ochre, burnt sienna and raw umber, and painting it with simple horizontal strokes to indicate the flat surface of the pathway. I am painting the roofs of the houses with a mixture of vermilion hue and burnt sienna, considering that they are terracotta tile roofs. Again, this is just the first layer for the roofs. We will be adding the details subsequently. The roofs and the other elements of the distant houses will have lesser detailings, of course, so that they don't look too prominent. We don't want to make them look too prominent, so that the depth of the landscape will be brought out. For the main tree trunk now, I am using yellow ochre, burnt sienna and a bit of raw umber. Here too we will have to take care of the direction of the light source. Since here we are considering it coming from the right hand side, the right hand side of the tree trunk will have lighter tones, and the other side, the side which is against the light, will have darker tones. And now I am adding more and more details for the tree foliage, again of course keeping in mind the direction of the light source. The earlier painted surface has now dried up completely, and so now when we are working over this, when I am painting new leaves over this dry surface, we'll have to take care of the hard and soft edges of each of these elements, in the sense that I'm keeping the edges which are against the light, I'm keeping them hard, and the edges which are towards the light, I am softening them with a damp brush. This technique gives a very nice effect to the whole painting. It gives a softer look to the whole painting, at the same time maintaining interest in the areas where it has to be. Now that the first layer is done for the entire painting, I am now adding more and more details gradually for each of the elements, adding darker tones for surfaces which are against the light source, adding shadows of elements wherever applicable. In watercolors, we can always go from light to dark, but never from dark to light. And so the first layer is always light, and we add glazings and darker tones in subsequent layers. We can even make some background patches more darker so as to make certain adjacent elements of the foreground pop up. As you can see here, I added darker tones to the background trees adjacent to our main house, because of which the house starts looking more prominent. We gradually add details like the windows, the window grill, the door, the shadows within the door, the tile lines of the roof, the shadow of the roof. There's so much to paint, and it's so much fun now, isn't it? And now with the negative painting technique, I am adding darks around the pathway bushes so that the pathway bushes will pop out, they will stand out. For the background, I am adding darker tones of greens. I will be adding a few browns here and there so that the hillside slopes will be indicated, which will not be too much in detail, but they will bring out the pathway bushes more and more. This can be done with various shades of greens and browns which merge into each other with the glazing technique. And now for the pathway bushes itself, I am again using darker tones of the yellow hue that I am using, painting the undersides of the bushes, making them more and more dark so that they will start looking more prominent. For the steps of the house, I will add more browns, and detailings along the pathway too will be done, and this will take care of the overall effect of the foreground. We are doing the shadows of the bushes now, which will bring out the bushes even more, adding a few details. More and more darker tones will have to be introduced for the shadows here and there. Remember, for watercolors what happens is the paints, as they dry up, they give a lighter effect, and so we do have to go over and over them every now and then so as to maintain the hue and saturation of the paints. Again, for the right hand side hillside, we are again doing the negative technique we are using to indicate the or bring out the pathway bush once again. And since the hillside is sloping, this side of the hillside will be darker, and so I'm using darker tones of greens and browns here and there. We will add to bring out the other elements more and more. Add the shadows of the roofs, the doorways and windows of the houses of the background a little bit, and work around the houses to bring them out slightly more. And now for the fences on both sides of the pathway, I am lifting out the background paint with a damp brush and then dabbing it with a tissue. This will have to be done several times over as the background paint has dried up, and so we'll have to repeat it more than once. We'll do this for both the vertical as well as horizontal members of the fences on both sides of the pathway, and then we can add the shaded areas of this fence. We simply add darker tones to the undersides of the horizontal members and the left edges of the vertical ones. Let's add some more details in the steps, the darker shades on the steps and the pathway in browns, shades of brown. And let's add some bushes which can be seen through the fences. These can be in various shades of greens. We'll add the bushes only in the foreground. We need not add them all over the hillside. Some prominent bushes in the foreground and just some suggestive patches of bushes on the sides will create interest and give some depth to the painting. We'll have this on both sides of the pathway. We can even add some grass blades in the foreground on both the sides. We use a thinner brush for the grass blades, of course, to give a more finer look, and the colors can be, of course, shades of greens and browns too. Like I said before, watercolor pigments appear lighter after drying, and so we do have to go over some of the surfaces again and again. And so I am adding more shadows for the roof and more darker tones for the shaded part of the tree trunk, and also some darker tones on this side of the hill. Add more darker tones behind the houses in order to make them pop out more. Now I'm adding finer branches to the tree with a fine brush. And then let's continue adding finishing touches to our painting here and there wherever necessary. I'm adding this tree here in the background so as to give a balance to the overall composition of our painting, as well as to provide some shade to the distant houses. Of course, this need not be so much in detail as much as the main tree, but of course the shape of the tree will have to be maintained. A few more finishing touches here and there and our landscape is done. If you liked the video, do subscribe, like, comment and share. This encourages me to bring you more such demos. If you would like to watch and enjoy similar videos, you may click on the screens displayed here. Happy watching!